Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Genuine Piece on Japan's decision to release the Fukushima nuclear wastewater into the Pacific Ocean. Let's get right to it. So what is happening? Their decision is to release 1.25 million tons of treated wastewater from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. This is the radioactive water that has been accumulating since 2011. This includes cooling water, rain, and groundwater. So what happened in 2011? There was an earthquake called the Tohoku earthquake of magnitude 9.1, which caused a tsunami that led to a nuclear disaster in Fukushima. TEPCO, Tokyo's utility company, has built over 1,000 tanks to hold these treated wastewater until decision has been made. There is over 1,000 tanks, and these are expected to be full by the second half of 2022. So the timeline currently is to prep for 2 years, so this is getting the right approvals and getting the actual preparations done, and then take about 3 decades to dilute and release this water into the Pacific Ocean, ending at around 2051. So how is this water treated? They're using this system called the ALPS, ALPS. This stands for Advanced Liquid Processing System, and this has been used since 2013 to treat their wastewater and filter out the most radioactive elements such as cesium and strontium. However, it cannot remove tritium, which is an isotope of hydrogen, and that is of greatest concern now. Therefore, the treated wastewater that are in the tanks are going to be diluted such that the concentration of tritium in the wastewater before release is well below standards set by the local government in Japan as well as by WHO, the World Health Organization. And this is supposed to be done with the supervision of the IAEA, which is the International Atomic Energy Agency. So you might wonder, what is the problem then? So there are criticism from neighboring countries. So this includes Taiwan, South Korea, and China. China has mentioned that Japanese officials should drink the water to prove that it is safe. Surprisingly, this has actually been done before by Japan to prove that, to gain trust, to try to gain trust from the public after the Fukushima nuclear disaster. South Korea has summoned the Japanese ambassador in Korea for the first time to firmly oppose this decision, and Taiwan has opposed it in similar ways. So their main concern seems to be around the impact for their surrounding waters, as well as the lack of consultation before the decision has been made. Another criticism is by Greenpeace, which is a pretty vocal environmental organization, and they were advising to store the water until the technology to filter everything is ready. And they're mainly worried about bioaccumulation, which is the accumulation of these radioactive materials through the food chain. They also mentioned that TEPCO actually has enough land to store all these tanks. So they're saying that it is just a cash play where they're just trying to save some money by dumping these all out because they don't want to use their land. Another opposition has been by the UN, by the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, OHCHR. They've said that the Japanese government is breaching the rights of the local citizens as well as the neighboring countries, and they're mainly worried about the bioaccumulation of carbon-14 and tritium. So who's for this decision then, other than Japan, of course? So interestingly enough, there is an organization, IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, who also report to the UN General Assembly. They said they welcome this announcement and will work with Japan to support safe and transparent implementation. They also mentioned that this is common practice internationally, and this can be seen for Canada as well. So in Ontario, there's quite the nuclear belt. We deal with our wastewater in similar ways, as well as the US Secretary of State. He thanked Japan in a tweet for its transparent efforts in its decision. So very, very polarizing so far between US and international, and even within international. And then on the other side, there is the neighboring Asian countries such as China, Japan, and Korea. Looking at how bad these radioactive materials are, there are two, carbon-14 and tritium, that the main concern has been around. Carbon-14 does not seem to pose much significant threat to the average human in terms of health. It has been very difficult to find much information on it, other than this paper that I found in 2007, which was actually refuted in 2011, using an example of soybeans. They were saying that if there were radioactively contaminated soybeans, 400 kilograms of soybeans need to be consumed by a person per day for a whole year for carbon-14 to actually pose a risk. Such a diet would actually lead to more severe health impacts than the radioactivity itself. Carbon-14 seems not to be of that much health-related concern. And next one was tritium. So tritium naturally occurs in drinking water at around 0.0001 millisieverts per year. And international standards for radioactivity is set at 1 millisieverts per year. Then a report by Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry stated that discharging all of the water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant, all of the treated water to the sea in 1 year would result in around 0.81 millisieverts per year of radioactivity exposure. This is still much less than the 1 millisieverts per year that is the standard worldwide. And this is much less than the natural radiation that we are exposed to every year. In Japan, they state that the natural radiation exposure for Japanese people is around 2.1 millisieverts per year. And in the US, this is around 6.2, which is almost triple the value. If they were to discharge all the treated radioactive water at once, would be only 0.81. So in terms of numbers and radioactivity, it seems that it is okay so far. And furthermore, lastly, there was a report by Korea's Nuclear Safety and Security Commission, so their federal branch that has the most expertise in nuclear safety, stated that there is no meaningful impact to Korea specifically. So what is our take for the Fukushima nuclear power plant wastewater decision? For me, it looks like they're scientifically sound. It seems that the radioactive exposure is relatively negligible, especially when compared to the natural radiation. And there is no evidence of carbon-14 bioaccumulation that I could find, and tritium is being treated and diluted to a level that is well below the standard. It seems that trust is a big issue here, with a lack of trust towards TEPCO and the Japanese government from the public as well as neighboring countries. And this is not exactly uncalled for because they have lied before and denied some accusations that turned out to be true. And they haven't been successful in recovering that trust since then. In this case, the IAEA as well as the neighboring countries are paying very close attention. For example, Taiwan has had over 30 sensors around their coast just to detect the radioactivity from Japan since the Fukushima incident. So even if Japan wanted to hide some things, it will be very difficult to do so with the supervision and very close attention from the IAEA, who's supposed to be monitoring them before, during, and after the releases. Another problem seems to be the lack of consultation. So I think that neighboring countries are not happy with the fact that they weren't consulted beforehand. However, there is an article that came out very recently that showed that there is some collaboration going on between Japan and Korea to do this in the proper way that both countries can agree on, which is a very positive sign. So at the end of the day, this seems like it's not a scientific or technical problem. It's more of a political and social problem. There is also the factor of the inter-Asia conflict, the Korea and Japan, China and Japan, Taiwan and Japan, the residual feelings from many incidents from the past. However, this incident alone scientifically it seems to be sound. So thank you for listening to another episode of The Genuine Piece, and see you on the next Genuine Piece.